At 6:15 a.m., long before the city's financial district stirred to life, the only sounds echoing through the marble halls of HelixCorp's towering headquarters were the rhythmic squeaks of a mop and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. James Porter, a 42-year-old janitor with streaks of gray at his temples and tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, moved like clockwork, quietly, efficiently, unnoticed. He was always done before the executives arrived. Nobody paid attention to the man in blue overalls who made sure the 54th floor sparkled before board meetings. But today was different. Because today, James left something behind. A yellow post-it note, simple and handwritten, was left tucked beneath a neatly folded cleaning rag on the CEO's desk. It read, "Please forgive me for what I've done. I had no choice. My son needed me. J.P." By 8:30 a.m., the 54th floor buzzed with tension. Coffee-fueled assistants darted around, and legal teams shuffled in with files the size of bricks. At the head of it all sat Victoria Langston, CEO of HelixCorp, the woman behind the company's meteoric rise, and the gatekeeper to a $200 million acquisition deal that was moments away from being finalized. Victoria wasn't someone who missed details. So when she walked into her glass-walled office and found the note on her desk, she paused. James Porter? The janitor? Her brow furrowed. She looked around. Everything was spotless, as usual. But something about the note gnawed at her. The words were haunting, almost like a farewell, or worse, a confession. Before she could call her assistant, her phone buzzed. "Ms. Langston," her CFO said breathlessly. "We have a problem. The document vault, it's offline. Someone tampered with the internal server last night. The buyer's team can't access the deal documents. They're threatening to walk." Her blood ran cold. "Pull security footage," she ordered. They did. And there, grainy but clear, was James Porter. In the server room. At 3:47 a.m. The boardroom grew tense as whispers spread. Everyone assumed the worst. Espionage? Blackmail? Was the janitor bought off? "He left a note," Victoria said, her voice steely as she slid it across the table. The head of legal picked it up and read it aloud. Faces tightened. Some looked smug, already blaming the help for the potential collapse of the deal. But something about James's note still didn't sit right with Victoria. There was no demand. No threat. Just sorrow. And one phrase echoed in her mind. "My son needed me." James Porter had worked at HelixCorp for 8 years. No HR violations, no tardiness. Just quiet, consistent work. Victoria called for his file. It was thin. She dug deeper. On his emergency contact, listed in careful block letters, was Ethan Porter, age 9. Primary care dependent. Attached was a doctor's note from 6 months ago. Ethan had a rare autoimmune disease. Expensive treatments. Frequent hospital visits. And then, another note. A rejection letter from the company's insurance provider. They denied extended coverage. Victoria leaned back, guilt blooming in her chest like a bruise. He hadn't tried to steal anything. He was trying to save his son. Victoria left the office without a word and headed to the security team herself. "I want to see everything from last night. Every angle. Every room," she demanded. They watched silently as James entered the server room. He didn't force anything. Instead, he carefully swapped out one hard drive. Replaced it with another. "What's on that drive?" she asked. An hour later, the answer came. It wasn't company secrets. It was a 3D printer software developed by James, for Ethan. A homemade innovation, designed to print customized braces that supported Ethan's fragile joints. The hospital couldn't afford them. James built a prototype using Helix Corp's discarded hardware after hours. And last night, he'd backed it up, in fear that his work computer, which the cleaning staff shared, was about to be wiped. The original drive he returned was untouched. No corporate breach. No sabotage. Just a desperate father trying to preserve something that mattered more than millions, his child's future. Victoria drove to the modest neighborhood listed on his employment form. A rusted gate. Peeling paint. But laughter echoed from the backyard. She found Ethan, skinny, bright-eyed, sitting on a picnic blanket with toy blocks shaped like skeleton joints. Beside him sat James, who froze when he saw her. "Ms. Langston." I saw the note," she said softly. "I wasn't trying to hurt the company," James pleaded. "I swear. I thought the system was getting wiped. I needed to back up Ethan's files. I couldn't lose what we've built. It's the only thing helping him move." Victoria didn't speak. She sat down on the grass next to Ethan. "Can I see it?" James nodded and brought out a crude brace. 3D printed, adjustable, with tiny initials engraved, EP. Tears pricked her eyes. "You made this?" she asked Ethan. He beamed. "Dad taught me. He says one day I'll walk without help." Victoria smiled. "You will." Back at Helix Corp, Victoria walked into the boardroom, all eyes on her. "Well?" the CFO asked. She placed the brace on the table. "This," she said, "is what nearly crashed a $200 million deal." Confused glances circled the room. "You all assumed theft," she continued, "because the man who cleaned our floors dared to touch our servers. But what James built could change lives. And we nearly punished him for being a father." Silence. "I'm reinstating him. And I'm also opening a new R&D grant, the Ethan Initiative. We'll fund innovations designed by people like James. People who understand real-world problems, not just boardroom buzzwords." A month later, the deal went through, stronger than ever. In fact, the buyers were so moved by Victoria's transparency and the story of Ethan's brace, they offered to fund the initiative too. James was promoted to innovation technician. He now worked days, in a lab, not alone with a mop, but with a team. Ethan's new braces were sleeker, stronger, and printed in minutes. And one morning, as Victoria arrived for another long day at the office, she found another note on her desk. This one read, "Thank you, for seeing me. JP." Months later, Helix Corp unveiled its newest wall installation, a tribute to unsung heroes of innovation. At the center was a photo of a janitor and his son, smiling, holding a prototype brace. Beneath it, in silver letters, were the words, "Sometimes, the biggest breakthroughs come from the quietest corners. Sometimes, the most extraordinary acts of love happen in the shadows, unnoticed, uncelebrated, and misunderstood. We often measure worth by job titles, suits, and salaries, forgetting that behind every quiet soul lies a story we haven't heard." James, a janitor, wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't chasing wealth or recognition. He was simply being a father, sacrificing sleep, dignity, and security to give his sick child a chance to walk. In a world obsessed with deals, numbers, and status, his humble note held more value than a $200 million contract. The true lesson? Never underestimate people based on their position. Greatness doesn't always wear a tie. Sometimes, it wears worn-out shoes, carries a mop, and leaves behind handwritten notes filled with quiet courage. Look closer. Listen deeper. And remember, kindness, love, and humanity will always outshine profit, status, and pride. Because in the end, what we do for others is the legacy that lasts. Blue Heart.